Hello and welcome to the program. This is Minority Opinions Podcast. I am the younger Will Smith of this podcast, Hito.
And I am the original older Will Smith, Ricardo.
And today we have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about Gemini Man. We're going to have a discussion, reviews, maybe a potential spoiler talk of the much discussed Joker starring Joaquin Phoenix.
Yes, sir.
That's going to be this week's episode. But how you doing, Ricardo? It's been 2 weeks.
I know, dude. It's been a wild ride, honestly. Like, I've been flooded with midterms. I had to film a few films. I went to a concert on Thursday for Tyler, the Creator, so that destroyed my legs and spine. So that concert was great. I for 2 days in a row, I was out and about partying. Partying, having a crazy life, and life's been good. This month is October is a good month.
That's good. How did your assignment go? The big assignment.
It was pretty big, honestly. I filmed it at a soccer field, and it was pretty nice. The camera, it was a Mark II Canon, and I bought my own SD card because I'm professional now, and it was pretty good. My first AC was late by an hour, so I had my roommate help me out record the time code and everything. He's a film major too, so luckily he knew some of the mechanics. It went well overall. I think it's a solid B-. But yeah, that's not too bad. It's been busy, but I'm the Hito of 2019, so I gotta do that.
A what?
Like you were Hito of 2017, but I'm Hito of 2019 to 2020.
All right. I guess.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? I'm taking I'm taking the same screwball comedy class as you, so it's like parallels. Right. It's like a poem. It has beats.
It rhymes.
It rhymes. Whoops. Yeah. But how you been, Hito? How's Japan?
Japan has been weird. I've been working as usual, teaching English to a bunch of kids. And yeah, life is all right. The weather is still kind of hot.
Question. I have a question. Yeah. What's that? What are those purple skies that I've been seeing all over Twitter? Like, what's that all about?
Purple sky?
Like, apparently before a tsunami, the sky becomes purple.
What?
Yeah, it was on Twitter for like a day or two, and they were saying like pray for Japan. I was like, what happened in Japan? And they're saying like apparently there's like a city that like before a tsunami comes, the sky emits like a purple color because like the waves interfere with the light rays, and like I don't know.
I'm sure somebody must have made it up.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It looked pretty weird. I don't know.
Never heard of such things, but we have a really huge typhoon hitting us right now. Not where I live in, just hitting Tokyo and.
I think it's that one. Yeah.
There's been blackouts and some rivers are flooded and stuff, and tourists are trapped. So,
oh my God.
So, there's that, but I don't know anything about the purple sky thing. So,
we've been in NorCal, San Francisco Bay Area. We've been experiencing those PGE blackouts.
PGE blackouts.
Yeah, like those people are like, oh, let's stop a fire in California, and people are like, oh my God, there's fires in LA, and me over here, I'm just like, first time. Like it's just like,
yeah,
it's like wildfires mean nothing to us in California. It's like we're used to it at this point. People are like, oh my God, save the cats, and I'm like, nah, it's not that big of a deal, honestly.
Unless it happens in Malibu, because that's where all the rich people live.
The fire happened in my hometown, and no one cared. It was on the news for like 2 days. It was like the holy fire, and I was like, that's my house. I was like, I live next to that community. That's crazy.
Jesus.
But enough about fires. Let's get down to today's reviews. First, we have Gemini Man.
Yes.
Directed by... Oh, you go first.
No. I was going to say the new film by Ann Lee and the new Fresh Prince movie.
Exactly. And I don't know about you, Hito, but I'm not that educated on Ang Lee films. I feel like I've only seen The Hulk, which people always think about mainly when they think of Ang Lee.
Yeah.
And I've seen Life of Pi, and that's it. And I guess now Gemini Man, but that's all I've seen, really. I've read that he's like the Taiwan. He was like the James Cameron of Taiwan because he's always trying to like innovate like filmmaking and stuff like that, like what he did for Gemini Man. You and I, even before the show started, we had an argument deciding which format I should have seen this movie in.
Yep.
Because he shot this film at 120 FPS, but apparently there's no theater in America that shows it any films in 120 FPS.
I mean, I heard there are like, 15 locations in the US that show Gemini Man in high frame rate, which is 120 frames per second, exactly the way he shot it.
Which I wanted to see.
Yeah, and in 3D.
Apparently Metreon is one of those theaters, and I thought, I want to see that experience. But then I was hearing you told me, and I saw some people complain about it, and I was like, do I really want to see this ugly quality of the film?
I kept telling you not to see it in that version and just watch it in the regular IMAX because high frame rate thing just hasn't really worked out. I know you're not interested, but Peter Jackson did similar thing with his Hobbit movies, the first Hobbit movie. Everyone who saw it in 48 frames per second was like, that felt like a sitcom.
I heard it's called the soap opera effect.
Yeah.
But like in this film, it's Secret Agent Henry something starring Will Smith, and then his assistant, and I think it's Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Mm-hmm.
And then I forgot his name from Doctor Strange. Not Doctor Strange, but his friend
Benedict Wong.
Benedict Wong. It's the three of them, and it's about Will Smith, a retired hitman, another hitman story, a retired hitman who wants to retire from a private military company, but then like the U.S. government's like, we don't want him to stay alive, so they hire this private military company called Gemini to assassinate him, and they use his own DNA to create a clone of Will Smith to make a younger Will Smith to assassinate himself. And I will say, this film, it is, I think it's the perfect 90s film. 90s action film. It has the DNA of Demolition Man, Face Off, little bit of Die Hard, but it has like the 90s flavor where this movie would have been such a revolutionary idea in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And it definitely has that, because didn't you tell me that this film was like kind of like in like production hell for like how many years? Like 16, 15?
15 plus years, I think.
It's not a cheesy script, but it definitely has like that 90s era action where it's not corny, but definitely has like those lighthearted moments where it's like, oh, that's a little bit cheesy. Like, it's not cheesy. People say it's wooden. Yeah, sometimes it might be. It's like when someone does like a cool guy moment, he's just like, yeah, you killed that guy. It's like, I did, and he deserved it. Like, it was like, oh, okay.
Right.
I saw strange lines like that. But the main attraction is the visual effects and that, oh, it's a younger Will Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got to say, the visuals for this film, like for the most part, it is mind-blowing how realistic the younger Will Smith looks.
Mm-hmm.
Because one aspect, which I thought was interesting, they shot most of the film in dark, shadowy locations for the younger Will Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only 2 scenes where like there's it's in broad daylight. For the most part, it looks real. Like you see the wrinkles and the muscles in Will Smith's face when he makes like expressions. So that usually convinces me, okay, yeah, this is real. And like the shadow over his eyelid, his cheeks, it keeps it real. But when some of the action sequences are occurring, you definitely see some of the lack of motion blur. And like you can kind of tell when it's CGI. Like there's a scene in the movie, I'm not going to say when, but they're in a different country. And there's an action sequence and it looks sometimes like a video game.
Mm-hmm.
Like PS2, like Black Panther PS2 video game looking special effects. Yeah, it doesn't look bad, but the action sequences, just like a 90s action film, there's a lot of big spectacle. This movie's more of an intimate action cornball movie. And overall, it's pretty solid action film. I think they're downgrading it a bit because like, oh, this is the worst Will Smith movie ever. It's like the Wild Wild West. And it's like, it's not that bad. It's not. I don't like saying this term, but it felt a bit dated.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like the cultural ideals and like attitude from the script when it was written doesn't translate well to today. If that makes sense. It's supposed to be a 2019 film, but it feels like a 1997 film.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that might be one of the weakest points. Like the story's weak. It's just it doesn't feel like it has enough like deftness to keep it holding and standing.
Mm.
Like, because Will Smith is like the one man show. He's the one who leads everything. Everybody else is kind of just there.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, I have to bring this up because it was just so horrific. There is a scene in the movie, and I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. It's shot in the broad daylight with like a lot of people around the area. I don't know what they were thinking, but when younger Will Smith appears, it is the most horrendous special effects. It was horrendous. I don't. Black Panther was really bad in my opinion. That was the worst one in my opinion for like the most recent times.
Mm-hmm.
No, this one's the worst. This one is Captain Worst. It was bad.
Wow.
Because there is a scene in the movie where they're in a dark, no sunlight environment
Mm-hmm.
where it shows younger Will Smith, and it looks so realistic that I got like, I was overwhelmed. I thought this is the future. This is the future of fucking magic within filmmaking. But then in contrast to the end, you're just like, okay, yeah, no, back to square one. It was like the Scorpion King when The Rock came out as a giant scorpion. Do you remember?
Oh,
That?
no.
It was that bad. It was horrendous.
Oh no.
I got flashbacks to the old games I used to play on my PS2. Like, it was that bad.
Wow.
It was.
That's saying something, especially from an An Lee movie.
I know, and it's like this guy made Life of Pi. Did Life of Pi win Best Picture?
No.
Best Visual Effects?
Maybe.
I think it won Best Visual Effects. And I remember I've seen parts of that movie, but from the parts I've seen, it looks realistic. The tiger,
Yeah.
the tiger.
Yeah.
So I'm
tiger.
thinking like, what's up with this? What's wrong? What was up with that specific scenario where it looked horrible? I think it's a solid action film. People are unfairly comparing it to John Wick, which I think is the most unfair comparison ever. I think it does a good job by itself, and it's a solid film. It's not bad. It's an entertaining film. It's not. Don't take it too seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Because people think it's going to be the next John Wick, which I don't think that's his intention. I think it was an experiment for Ang Lee to try out the technology.
Yeah, it's produced by Jerry Bruckheimer, who did like all those '90s cheesy action movie like Con Air and Bad Boys and other stuff, like those action movies from '80s and '90s. He produced all of those, so I know what to expect from this movie. I'm definitely gonna see it, and I'll get back to you when I do.
I do recommend it. It's Will Smith does give a good performance. It feels, he's a decent human being. He's a movie star.
Yeah.
But he does action well. Like, he's done like Men in Black, Wild Wild West. He's done stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not new to him. But I think with his charisma and the way the film's shot in the action sequences, it's really impressive how the action looks. I thought it was pretty solid, like John Wick quality action.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there are some twists and turns that make you go like, ugh. But it's still a good '90s action film. Good job, Ang Lee. I liked it. I liked it a lot. So, Hito, do I got a joke for you?
Oh, really?
I got a funny joke for you.
Okay, do tell.
All right. Let's say Todd Phillips, Best Director, Oscar for Joker. Oh, no. Man, that's a good joke.
Ha ha ha. As
Come
Joker
on.
would say, ha ha ha. Well, in this case, it's more high-pitched and uncontrollable laughter.
Yeah, you're doing Joker laugh that won an Oscar, and actually it was good. Well, by that joke that no one laughed to in the audience, apparently,
Yeah.
we're doing a review of Todd Phillips' Joker, starring Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, much highly anticipated, much discussed, even before the movie came out.
Much before.
Okay, here's the order of how we're gonna do this review. We're gonna do spoiler-free thoughts on this movie, and then we're gonna touch on the controversies. Is that all right for you, Ricardo?
That sounds legit. Just we'll give a spoiler warning when it comes up.
This movie takes place in the 80s, 81 to be specific, I
Yeah.
think. We follow this man named Arthur Fleck, played by Joaquin Phoenix, who who doesn't have a great life. In the beginning of the movie, we see him getting jumped by a bunch of kids. He works for this, what do you call
Clown
it?
for hire.
Yeah, clown for hire company, but he gets fired from that job. And he has this condition when he gets upset or angry, or like when his
Anxiety, basically.
anxiety builds up, he bursts out laughing, like uncontrollable laughter.
Hmm.
And it's implied that it is a side effect of one of the medications that he takes. He's isolated from the world. The world is not very kind to him. And then in the background of all this, there's super rat problems.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, in which this city, Gotham City, is infested with super rats. There's definitely a political metaphor there, and people are starting to rise, and there's a sort of a war between the rich and the poor, and that's where this Joker story fits in a nutshell, without spoiling anything.
Yeah, let me tell you something about this film. I've been following this film's like quote unquote controversy. I think that word's a bit extreme for this film.
Mhm.
And honestly, I don't think this film is as deep as people claim it is. The film focuses on what makes this man Arthur Fleck become the Joker, and it's definitely it's a character study ish,
Mhm.
but it doesn't have the reinforcements to keep it much interesting about this character. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it is a story about a man losing his sanity. It's much more of a psychological thriller slash drama.
And since it has like the beats of a grimy crime film, it definitely has resemblance to like Taxi Driver, and definitely feels like Todd Phillips is trying to emulate that type of style of film with like the grimy crime run. What does a man do to become the most cynical he could become?
Mm-hmm.
But I think in this film, the way the character is written, like I say Joker, Fleck, I feel like Todd Phillips doesn't have enough caliber to make this character much more interesting than the actual character himself from the like from compared to like Heath Ledger and Michael Keaton, not Michael Keaton's Joker, not Jack Nicholson. That's what I meant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, if there's anything that his filmography proves, is that subtlety is not his thing. Like,
He is not good at subtlety in this film.
he did the Hangover trilogy, he did Old School, so like all these like raunchy, like a frat boy comedies. Like, he hasn't done any serious movies in the past, so
Don't get me wrong, I do love The Hangover because its premise is very silly by itself, and I think the content is hilarious.
mhm.
But when you shift from this comedic, unless you're Adam McKay, he shifts from this comedy genre to, I don't even know what to call it, like crime thriller, psychological thriller. I don't know what he's trying to attempt with this film, honestly.
It feels like somebody saw Taxi Driver for the first time and decided to remake it, make his own version of it. And I just kept seeing similarities. The story beats are very similar to Taxi Driver, the king of comedy, especially.
It definitely makes sense why you have De Niro on the show, on the movie, because like,
Mhm.
oh, we want to make a reference to King of Comedy and Taxi Driver. Now, here's a better question: what do we think about Arthur Fleck? I have one word that might describe my feelings toward him.
Okay.
It's pitiful.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would use as well.
Because, and this is where I feel like my main concern with the film is. It's like, what does Todd Phillips want us to feel about this movie, and what message is he trying to convey? I think that's the biggest con I have with this film. So Todd Phillips is trying to make a character Joker, which I should have to say this ever again, but Joker is a terrorist.
Mhm.
He does things because he is chaotic, and it's established the idea of the Joker is that he doesn't have any beliefs, but he clearly does, but he's very smart about it.
Mhm.
And that's what makes the Joker so interesting. Like, he uses his get up as a clown, like chaotic, but he's a man with a plan. And in this film, they make him a little bit more sloppy.
Right.
And I'm not entirely again. I don't know what Todd Phillips wants us to make of the Joker. Like, does he want us to cheer for him? Does he want us to think like, oh, this guy's an evil villain? And I think this film's confused on what it wants to say to us, because there is imagery of like classism. Like there was one part where you see like the phrase "eat the rich,"
Mm-hmm.
which is a term used by, I think, Antifa to talk about socialism against the capitalism. And I thought, okay, is Joker Antifa? And I was like, that's strange. But then like Joker's like, oh, I don't have any beliefs. I don't have a stance. So it's like, so what are you for then?
Right.
Are you? And then there are acts of violence in this film that make you think, okay, what do you want to accomplish with this? What are you trying to tell us about this character? And I don't think Todd Phillips is qualified enough to make this character deeper than it should be, considering Joker has a very fuzzy origin story that's never been established in films. Comics, yeah, there is some stories and backgrounds with Joker, but it's best to leave it alone, because I don't think Joker's a character to very flesh out in the film.
I will say, without spoiling anything, quintessential Joker stuff doesn't happen until the last 20 minutes of it or so. Everything leading up to it is somebody becoming a terrorist, somebody losing his mind. Arthur Fleck is basically standing on the edge of a cliff the whole movie, and he just wants to just fall. All he needs is, I'm quoting a line from The Dark Knight, all we need is one more push. And that's what he kind of wants. I liked this movie a little more than you did, although we very much feel the same way about the problems with the movie. This is not as great as some people think it is. Like all the folks who raved about it at Venice and Toronto and all the other festivals, I don't think it's that good. But I also think it's not as terrible as some people make it seem to be. I think it has a lot to say about so many different things, but ultimately doesn't offer any like conclusion in the end. That's why it feels very empty. I think this is a film that you would want to talk about with your friends and your family after seeing it. And I think that's the fun part for me. And Joaquin is great. I mean, saying Joaquin is great, it doesn't really mean anything anymore, because when was the last time he was actually bad in a movie?
He's never been in the bad. He's like Daniel Day-Lewis. He's just, every movie he's in, it's just good. It's just always good. So
He's
even
great.
if it wasn't Joaquin, I think this movie wouldn't be. I don't think this movie would have been as raved as it would have been.
Yeah, he definitely elevates the material, but I do think the movie is so all over the place, just idea-wise, politically. I think Todd Phillips has a very weird understanding of what Antifa is. Like, some people think Antifa is this like crazy extremist group that wants to bring chaos, but Antifa literally stands for anti-fascism. And I think Todd Phillips confuses that idea and tries to portray the poor in this movie, the people who fight and cheer for the Joker, as Antifa. I also think the super rat metaphor doesn't really work. I know there is it's trying to do the, I'm not going to name his name because it's disgusting, but the President of the United States, like Thomas Wayne represents that guy. And there's a battle between the rich and the poor, and it's trying to say so many different things, but ultimately it's like, here are all these ideas I put in this movie, figure it out. It's like, no, you can't really do that for this type of movie. So I guess we should talk very quickly, because I'm really exhausted talking about all the controversies anyways, but let's touch on some of the things.
Yeah. Oh, I can talk about it for a bit.
Okay, yeah. So, is this movie dangerous?
Absolutely not. I don't know why people. It's an old argument. I have very strong feelings about this particular topic, but it's the
Mm-hmm.
same exact topic in every different decade. It's always these hardcore Republicans saying video games, music, and movies cause violence in the country. Oh, just because Kendrick Lamar says, I don't want to be shot by the police, apparently that's an act of terrorism. Like, oh no. Like, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, apparently just because a movie has guns in it and people die in it, that promotes violence and incel violence from the United States. And it causes school shootings. No, it doesn't. There are so many proven studies from Germany, England. Japan plays way more video games than us. They watch a crap ton of action films.
Mm-hmm.
And do you see shootings over there in Japan? No, you don't.
No.
In Tokyo, not Tokyo, Korea, South. They play a crap ton of video games that involve like shooting. Do they have shootings? No, they don't. Movies have existed forever. The idea of the copycat killer regarding film culture, that is such a outdated, conservative, and I'm using that word very precisely, not even political stance, just very conservative, traditional idea. And
Mm-hmm.
it's getting the problems of the actual country and pushing it toward entertainment. Because essentially, this movie is a comic book film. It's meant to entertain. It's not. I mean, people say it's deep. I don't think it's deep, but the idea, because people thought this movie was going to promote incels, and it's nowhere near that. I think it's just a way for people to cause a stir up for this film, which it doesn't. It doesn't hold up. I feel like since the movie came out, people are gonna be like, "Oh, it's a movie about class and you know poverty," but when really it had nothing to do with violence. Like Joker, he's an extreme example. No one should follow extreme examples. Like even when Dark Knight Rises, like when that occurred, the shooting occurred.
Yeah.
Apparently, the idea that the guy said he was like Joker, apparently that was false. It was just because he had orange hair, and people thought, "Oh, I'm gonna be like Joker and go to the theater." No, in the interview, he said, "I went there because Dark Knight Rises was the biggest movie of the world at the time."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he knew, okay, that's a target I could go for. Not because of the movie he does the actions, it's just because of the population. And people in the media are just like, let's use a scapegoat and use a Joker movie and comic book movies and movies in general to put our poorly executed laws onto them instead of us.
This is such a stupid argument. The whole thing is stupid. You know what causes violence? Actual violence? Guns. Movies do not cause violence. Video games do not cause violence. I'm sure there were some insane people who were inspired by what they saw in movies and video games to commit horrendous acts, but generally speaking, people are smart enough to know the difference between fiction and reality. Just because, like, you see a horror movie and you see people using guns, they're not promoting pro-gun policies.
They need to separate fiction and reality. I think that's the biggest thing that that people need to understand. Twitter culture, I'm calling you out. You need to shut up.
Taxi Driver came out in the 70s. That was a very controversial movie, and people talked about it, and that movie is far more violent than Joker. The violence
and much more sketchy.
Yeah, the violence in that movie is so horrifying. But did people go out on the street and start killing people? No. When like Fight Club came out, that movie has a very problematic ideology. It's a movie. It's a story about a schizophrenic white guy losing his mind and creating a terrorist group and thinks that anarchy and chaos is the way to solve problems. When people went to see that movie, did they come out and start bombing buildings and killing people? No, they didn't. So please stop this thing that, Joker movie will somehow make people crazy and kill people. Like, it doesn't do that. Like, the hypocrisy in this is that when Marvel movies get released, people don't talk about it. Like, if you look at those superhero movies, it's very violent. Like, it's essentially grown-ass men and women punching each other to solve problems. People don't talk about violence in Batman movies, even though Batman and Joker are basically the same character. It just stands for, like, they both have different ideology, but what they do is pretty much the same. Batman beats the shit out of people. But people still idolize that character because he's fighting for the good cause. He's still beating people up, beating the shit out of them. So why are we not having the same argument when those movies get released? All right, so I think we talked enough about the controversies. I think we should wrap up. Final thoughts on Todd Phillips's Joker?
I think it's an empty jar of nothingness.
In which Joaquin Phoenix is great.
Yes, he is the only. He is a bottle rocket in a jar.
Like I said, I liked it, I think, a little more than you did. There were entertaining bits. Joaquin is great. There are some ideas. It flirts with ideas that I was kind of interested in. The last 20 minutes, great. I think you agree with that as well.
Yes. But overall, this movie had more controversy that talked about real subjects than the actual movie talking about real subjects.
Yeah, it's not that deep.
It's not that. It's just soccer.
It's just
Quote, super bad. It's just soccer. Michael Cera, it's just soccer.
In case anyone didn't get that joke, there's a scene in Superbad.
Yeah, Dave Franco is playing soccer, but he's being a little bit too try hard, and he kicks the ball and he passes it by Jonah Hill, and he's just like, "Come on, man, get back in the game." And then Michael Cera just goes, "Dude, Dave, calm down, man. It's just soccer.
Yeah.
Like, it's just soccer, man. Like, just don't take it too seriously. It's not that deep." Well, Hito, thank you for being a good younger Will Smith.
And thank you for being the original Will Smith.
Copycatters everywhere. Beware.
Yeah.
That rhymed by accident.
See, it all rhymes. It all comes back.
It's like a poem. It rhymes. Quote George Lucas. I never thought. There's only 2 quotes I borrow from him. That one and like a special effect is pretty boring without a story. But Hito, thank you again for another episode of Minorities Opinions podcast. And thanks to our audience for supporting us through week 16 or 15. I've lost track because we're that deep into our culture now.
Thanks for listening. Subscribe and review us on Apple Podcasts, and follow us on other major podcast suppliers. Tweet us at MinorityOPod. You can send us a letter to minorityopodcast@gmail.com.
Share with your friends. This helps that we're still a small, underfunded podcast, so please help us out with that.
Yeah, and follow Ricardo on Instagram. I forgot your Instagram handle. So
It's Ricky, all lowercase by the way. Ricky_Ricardo 971.
Was it 7-1?
971, yeah. Or 987. I'm sorry, 987. And follow my letterbox. It's gonna be Ricardo 971. Very easy to find. And next week we're gonna talk about probably El Camino.
Yeah, we are definitely going to talk about that movie.
And I bet we're both gonna be supercharged about it.
We are a huge fans of Breaking Bad, so
biases beware.
bias aware. Yeah,
Biases
be aware.
We're gonna be as
Yeah.
we'll keep that from next week.
Mm-hmm.
But Hito,
And we'll probably talk about some new releases as well. So
yeah, so keep in mind, stay subscribed, stay open, and watch films. And thank you again for joining us on Minorities Opinions podcast. Good night.